There is a difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the cry of the heart when it feels abandoned, unseen, or disconnected. But aloneness is not the same. Aloneness is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the space where all masks fall away, where no roles are required, and where the truth of one's own being is revealed without the noise of others' opinions. To be alone is not to be lacking. To be alone is to finally meet oneself without interruption. When we step away from the crowd, when the voices that constantly tell us who we should be grow silent, a new kind of sound emerges. It is the sound of our own breath, the rhythm of our own heart, the quiet pulsing of life itself flowing within us. At first, many resist this silence. They want the distraction of company, the noise of conversation, the comfort of validation. Yet, it is precisely in the absence of these distractions that we discover the root of strength. Aloneness teaches us to stand, not because we are supported by others, but because we find a ground within ourselves that is unshakable. The teacher of aloneness does not shout. It whispers. It does not present lessons in the language of textbooks, but in the deep sensations of being present with oneself. When one is truly alone, the mind has nowhere to escape. It begins to reveal its own restlessness, its constant search for stimulation, its patterns of grasping and avoiding. Many people, when left alone even for a short time, immediately reach for something to occupy them: a phone, a screen, a conversation. They believe they cannot bear the emptiness. But what they cannot bear is the confrontation with themselves. Aloneness places a mirror in front of us and does not allow us to turn away. This mirror can be uncomfortable. It shows us our attachments, our fears, our unhealed wounds. It reminds us of all the ways we try to fill our inner spaces with external distractions. Yet, if we stay with it, if we resist the urge to run, a transformation begins. Slowly, what first felt unbearable becomes a sanctuary. The silence that once seemed heavy becomes nourishing. In the absence of others, we hear our own voice with clarity. In the stillness, a new kind of energy awakens. Not scattered outward, but contained, concentrated, and alive. Aloneness teaches the art of presence. Without the constant pull of external demands, the mind learns to rest. Thoughts begin to slow, awareness sharpens, and the body softens into the moment. In this state, one discovers a kind of companionship deeper than any relationship, the companionship of the self with itself. To walk into aloneness is to enter a temple where no one else can follow. In that temple, the only prayer is awareness, and the only offering is silence. It is often said that growth comes through challenges, and aloneness is one of the greatest challenges a person can face. Not because it is dangerous, but because it removes the masks we wear in front of others. Alone, there is no role to play. Alone, there is no one to impress. Alone, there is no stage for performance. There is only the raw encounter with one's own nature. Many fear this because it is easier to live in the expectations of others than to face the question, who am I when no one is watching? Yet this question is the beginning of wisdom. When one learns to be alone without fear, life changes. No longer is happiness dependent on company. No longer is identity built upon external recognition. Aloneness teaches self-sufficiency of the deepest kind. It reveals that the inner reservoir of peace and clarity is not dependent on circumstances. This understanding cannot be borrowed from others. It must be lived, felt, and discovered in the solitude of one's own being. There is also a power hidden in aloneness that cannot be accessed in constant company. When energy is not dispersed outward, it gathers inward. This energy is subtle but profound. It allows one to see life with sharper vision, to sense the undercurrents that are often missed in the noise of social interaction. In aloneness, one becomes attuned to the subtleties of existence. The sound of wind moving through leaves, the sensation of breath traveling through the body, the steady rhythm of silence that underlies all things. Aloneness teaches humility because it shows how small we are in the vastness of existence. Yet at the same time, it teaches greatness because in that vastness, we also discover that we are not separate from it. Alone under the sky, the distinction between self and universe begins to blur. The same space that stretches across the cosmos is the space that lives within our own being. In this realization, aloneness ceases to feel like isolation. It becomes union, not with another person, but with existence itself. Those who embrace aloneness carry a different kind of presence. They no longer cling to relationships out of fear, nor chase validation to fill a void. They relate to others from fullness, not from lack. they can enjoy company without being enslaved by it, and they can walk alone without feeling diminished. This is the silent strength that aloneness offers. It is a strength not built on dominance or control, but on the quiet assurance that nothing is missing because nothing essential can ever be taken away. Aloneness, then, is not an enemy to escape, but a teacher to sit with. It does not demand worship, only attention. It is the patient companion waiting for us to stop running, the gentle guide reminding us that everything we seek outside has already been placed within. When one begins to see aloneness not as emptiness, but as abundance, not as absence, but as presence, a shift occurs. What once felt like a burden begins to feel like a gift, and in that gift lies the possibility of true freedom. Because the one who is at home in aloneness is at home everywhere, with everyone, and in every circumstance, separation is not always a sign of loss. It is often misunderstood, feared, and resisted because human nature clings to what feels known, even if what is known has already expired in its purpose. Separation is the teacher that rarely announces its arrival, yet it carries within it the seeds of change and the invitation to prepare for something greater. It is the clearing of old soil before a new planting season, the pause before movement, the silence before the music begins again. To separate is not to abandon, but to recognize that growth requires distance, clarity, and space to realign with what is essential. When a tree sheds its leaves, it is not in mourning but in preparation. The tree knows that the weight of what once served it must fall away so that its roots can conserve energy for the winter and gather strength for the spring. Separation functions in a similar way in human experience. When circumstances, relationships, or phases of life detach from us, the instinct may be to grasp tightly and resist. Yet the more we hold on, the more we delay the unseen work of preparation that begins when the separation is accepted. In stillness, when something has been taken or released, there is an emptiness that feels unfamiliar, but that emptiness is the fertile ground for what is yet to come. Separation strips away illusions of permanence. It forces us to confront what we truly depend upon, what identity we have borrowed from external connections, and what distractions have disguised themselves as purpose. In this stripping away, the self is exposed, not weak, but raw, unlayered, and ready for refinement. Preparation requires this stripping down, for only in that state of vulnerability can we rebuild with intention rather than with attachment. The old roles, expectations, and habits that defined us in one chapter cannot always accompany us into the next. Separation creates the boundary between what has already fulfilled its role and what is now being prepared to emerge. Consider the caterpillar enclosed in its cocoon. To an outside observer, it appears motionless, perhaps even lost. But within that enclosure, a transformation is quietly underway. The separation from the world, from its former self, is the necessary condition for wings to form. Without the solitude of the cocoon, without the distance from its old identity, the butterfly could never take shape. In the same way, human beings need moments of separation, not as punishment, but as preparation. To grow wings requires stepping back from the noise and weight of what has already served its purpose. Preparation through separation also teaches endurance. It requires patience to sit in the space between endings and beginnings. Many rush to fill the void too quickly, seeking immediate replacements, distractions, or reassurances. But true preparation cannot be rushed. It requires trust that silence is working on you, that absence is not emptiness but a rearrangement, that loss is not destruction but a clearing. Just as a field must lie fallow before a new harvest, so too must the spirit rest in separation before it can bear fruit again. Separation sharpens awareness. When stripped of what is familiar, the senses awaken to subtler dimensions of life. The mind begins to notice the patterns it once ignored, the habits that no longer serve, the attachments that weighed it down. What once seemed necessary may be revealed as optional, and what once felt permanent may dissolve into impermanence. This clarity is not given when everything is intact. It arises when something has been taken away. Preparation depends on this clarity, for it ensures that when the next step comes, it is chosen consciously rather than inherited blindly from the past. There is also a discipline in separation. It asks you to refrain from filling silence with noise, to resist the urge to rebuild immediately, to withstand the discomfort of being without what once defined you. It trains the mind to be content with less, the heart to endure solitude, and the spirit to trust in unseen timing. The discipline of waiting is itself preparation, for the strength required in the future is being forged in the present space of absence. Without this discipline, the foundation would remain fragile, unable to support the weight of what is to come. Separation, then, is not an end but a threshold. It is the testing ground where one learns endurance, clarity, and trust. It is the preparation chamber where distractions are burned away, attachments loosened, and the self is purified to step into a new dimension of being. Just as the seed must break from its shell and the river must separate from its source to flow into new landscapes, so too must we embrace the necessity of parting, knowing that what is left behind was only ever meant to guide us to this moment of preparation. To resist separation is to resist preparation, but to see it as a stage of transformation allows us to endure it with patience and openness. Every silence, every loss, every distance is an invitation to align more deeply with the essence of who we are becoming. What appears empty is full of unseen labor. What feels like loss is the space making for growth, and what seems like an end is only the shaping of a beginning not yet visible. In a world where noise fills every corner, silence is often mistaken for emptiness. Yet silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. When silence is embraced, the senses refine themselves. What once was blurred by distraction begins to emerge with clarity. The chatter of the mind softens, the clutter of thought dissolves, and what remains is a sharpened ability to see, to hear, and to feel. Silence does not dull perception, it polishes it. It takes the rough stone of scattered attention and grinds it into the sharp edge of awareness. When silence enters, the mind begins to rest, but rest does not mean inactivity. Rest in silence is a preparation, a returning of energy that was lost in constant thought and outward seeking. The mind, once chaotic, begins to collect itself. Thoughts that rush like an untamed river flow into a steady stream. In this calm, the ability to observe becomes stronger. One sees more in less, hears more in stillness than in noise. Silence awakens hidden senses. It reveals the subtleties that otherwise remain unnoticed when life is drowned in constant sound. Awareness is not merely the act of looking but the quality of seeing. When sharpened through silence, awareness gains depth. The eyes no longer skim the surface of reality but penetrate into its essence. A simple movement of the wind across the trees, which once passed unseen, becomes a teaching in impermanence. The sound of a single breath becomes a reminder of life itself. The smallest detail becomes vast in meaning because silence has opened the inner space to perceive it fully. Without silence, perception is shallow, distracted, and fleeting. With silence, perception is deep, rooted, and expansive. Silence sharpens awareness because it requires presence. In silence, there is no hiding behind words, no escape in distraction. What is there must be faced directly. The mind cannot run endlessly because silence holds it still like a mirror. In that mirror, awareness begins to see not only the world but also the self. Patterns of thought, emotional waves, hidden impulses, all become clearer. Awareness sharpens by turning inward before it turns outward. Just as a blade is sharpened by contact with a stone, awareness is sharpened by contact with silence. There is a discipline in silence that most resist. To remain in silence is to confront restlessness, the discomfort of being alone with the self. But within that discomfort lies the sharpening process. At first, silence may feel heavy, even unbearable. Yet if one remains, the heaviness turns to lightness, the restlessness to stillness. From this stillness, clarity arises. Awareness becomes so precise that even the subtlest thought is noticed at its birth. The sharpness of this awareness can cut through illusions, through self-deception, and through the fog of confusion. In silence, time itself changes. Moments expand. What once was rushed through now stretches into full presence. Eating a meal in silence reveals textures and tastes never noticed before. Walking in silence reveals the rhythm of each step and the weight of the body upon the earth. Breathing in silence reveals the miracle that life is sustained with every inhale and exhale. Silence magnifies the ordinary until it becomes extraordinary. Through this magnification, awareness is honed like a blade that becomes sharper with every stroke. When silence is cultivated, awareness extends beyond the self. One begins to sense the atmosphere of a place, the mood of another person, the energy of a situation. These are not learned through words but through refined perception. Silence teaches to listen not only with the ears but with the whole being. It teaches to see not only with the eyes but with the heart. It teaches to feel not only with the skin but with the essence of awareness itself. The sharpening of awareness through silence expands perception into realms unseen by noise. Noise scatters energy, silence gathers it. Noise keeps the mind reactive, silence makes it responsive. Noise blinds, silence opens the eyes. This is why silence has always been the companion of wisdom. The sages, monks, and seekers of all traditions returned to silence, not because they fled from the world, but because they sought to sharpen their awareness of it. To sit in silence is to train the mind as a warrior sharpens his blade patiently, steadily, without haste, without force, yet with unwavering consistency. Silence is not passive. It is active refinement. It is the whetstone of awareness. In silence, the mind becomes attentive, not dull. It becomes awake, not asleep. It becomes receptive, not distracted. Every sense grows sharper. The eyes detect subtle shifts of light. The ears hear layers within sound. The body feels the most delicate changes of energy. Awareness transforms from a blunt instrument into a precise tool capable of cutting through illusion, grasping the essence of reality, and aligning itself with truth. The sharpening of awareness through silence is not a single act, but a continual practice. Just as a blade dulls with use and must be sharpened again, awareness too becomes dull with the noise of life and must be renewed in silence. Each return to silence restores its edge. Each return polishes perception. Each return deepens presence. In this continual rhythm of silence and awareness, life becomes more vivid, more immediate, and more profound. Before facing the conflicts of the outside world, there must first be a reckoning within. The greatest warriors, thinkers, and seekers throughout history have all understood this truth in some form. The preparation for any external challenge begins with cultivating the landscape of the inner self. Outer battles are merely reflections of the state of our inner world. When the mind is scattered, the body will falter. When the heart is restless, actions become reactive rather than intentional. And when the spirit is untethered, no victory in the external realm will bring lasting peace. Inner strength is not a luxury, it is the foundation upon which all external endeavors are built. Without it, even the smallest storm outside will feel like a hurricane within. Strength begins not in the muscles, but in the mind. The training ground for resilience is silence, discipline, and self-awareness. A sword in the hands of one who cannot control their emotions becomes a weapon of destruction. But in the hands of someone who has tamed their inner impulses, the same sword becomes an instrument of justice and clarity. This is why before lifting heavy burdens in the world, one must first learn to sit still with their thoughts, to face their own doubts, and to confront the shadows within. These unseen battles shape the way we enter the visible ones. Inner strength is the ability to remain calm when everything around you is demanding urgency. It is the discipline to hold back when ego is pushing you to lash out. It is the quiet confidence that emerges when you no longer depend on external validation to affirm your worth. Without cultivating these qualities, the outer battles drain us, leaving us weak and empty even in moments of outward triumph. The world is full of individuals who achieved recognition, wealth, or influence, yet collapsed under the weight of inner turmoil. Their outer victories could not compensate for inner fragility. True strength begins with acceptance. Acceptance of one's flaws, acceptance of one's limits, acceptance of the present moment as it is. This acceptance does not mean resignation. Rather, it becomes the ground from which transformation can rise. Denial of one's inner struggles only pushes them into hidden corners of the mind where they continue to control us unconsciously. To build inner strength, one must bring everything into the light: fears, insecurities, disappointments, and see them clearly. By observing them without judgment, a person weakens their hold and gains freedom of choice. Inner battles are not fought with force but with patience. To resist anger is not to suppress it, but to understand its root. To overcome fear is not to pretend it doesn't exist, but to face it with clarity. To silence doubt is not to drown it out with noise, but to meet it with the certainty of persistence. These practices demand more courage than any physical confrontation because they require one to turn inward to face the truths that are often uncomfortable and raw. Yet it is precisely here, in the silence of self-confrontation, that strength is born. When one learns to govern the inner landscape, the outer world becomes less intimidating. Conflicts with others are seen as reflections of conflicts within. Aggression from another is understood not as a personal attack, but as an expression of their own unresolved battles. This perspective allows one to respond not from fear or ego, but from grounded clarity. The strongest individual in any room is not the one who shouts the loudest or strikes the hardest, but the one who remains calm, unshaken, and purposeful amidst chaos. The cultivation of inner strength is not achieved in a single moment, but through daily practice. Each morning presents an opportunity to discipline the mind. Each challenge offers a chance to choose patience over impulse, understanding over reaction. Through repetition, the mind becomes steady, the heart becomes anchored, and the body aligns with this internal stability. Gradually, the storms of the world lose their power to sway you. Because the roots within you run deep, external battles often tempt us to act before we are ready. The urgency of life can push us to confront situations while our inner world is unprepared. This leads to wasted energy, broken focus, and unnecessary suffering. But when one takes the time to prepare inwardly, the outer challenges transform. They are no longer mountains blocking the path, but steps that test and reveal the strength already cultivated. Each confrontation then becomes not a threat, but an opportunity to demonstrate inner mastery. In every tradition of wisdom, the same message echoes: conquer yourself first, and the world will follow. The victory over anger, fear, and doubt is far more significant than any victory over another. For when inner strength is attained, external battles lose their power to destabilize you. Life continues to bring challenges, but you approach them not as a fragile vessel tossed in the storm, but as a grounded presence that shapes the direction of the winds themselves. Inner strength is not about building walls to protect yourself from the world, but about creating a foundation so solid that no matter what the world sends your way, you remain unshaken. This strength cannot be borrowed, purchased, or inherited. It must be forged through discipline, through silence, and through the daily decision to meet life from a place of clarity rather than chaos. It is the preparation that happens in solitude, in stillness, in the unseen hours when the mind is trained, the emotions are tempered, and the spirit is refined. Only then does one step into the outer battles with the kind of presence that transforms conflict into growth, resistance into resilience, and challenge in the proving ground of inner mastery. Loneliness is often misunderstood. People imagine it as being without company, sitting in empty rooms, walking down silent streets, or living in isolation from the rest of the world. But loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It is the absence of alignment with oneself. It is the feeling of being surrounded by many yet deeply disconnected inside. The noise of the world cannot drown out the silence of disconnection, and no amount of company can replace the harmony that comes when you are truly in alignment with your own being. The path from loneliness to alignment is not about adding more people into your life. It is not about filling your schedule, joining every group, or forcing yourself to be endlessly busy. That is the illusion many chase, believing that if they are surrounded, they will not feel alone. Yet the deepest loneliness can occur in crowded rooms. The real journey is inward, not outward. It is about listening to the misalignment within your own body, your own mind, your own spirit, and discovering how to bring these parts together into harmony. Loneliness is a teacher. When you feel its presence, it is not there to punish you, but to show you what is missing. It reflects the distance between the life you are living and the essence of who you are. When the mind races in one direction, the body drags in another, and the heart longs for something else entirely, the result is separation within. And this separation is the source of loneliness. Alignment, on the other hand, is unity. It is when thoughts, actions, and emotions move as one. It is when you stop fighting yourself and begin moving in flow with your own truth. To begin this shift, one must first stop running from loneliness. The more you escape it, the more it follows. Sit with it instead. Allow its weight to press upon you. Ask what it is showing you. Often, you will notice patterns, the ways you act that do not reflect your inner values, the habits you cling to that no longer nourish you, the relationships you keep that silence your true voice. These realizations are painful, but they are necessary. Pain is not the enemy, it is a signal. It points toward what must be released so alignment can arise. Loneliness also thrives in comparison. When the eyes are fixed outward, measuring life against the paths of others, discontent grows. The mind whispers that you are behind, different, excluded. But alignment is not about matching the rhythm of others, it is about finding your own rhythm. A tree does not bloom by imitating the tree beside it. It blooms when its roots find nourishment and its branches reach toward the light in their own way. In the same manner, you move out of loneliness when you stop comparing your pace, your journey, your being with anyone else. The practice of alignment begins with awareness, breathing with intention, sitting in silence long enough to hear the currents moving inside you. When you notice tension between thought and feeling, between what you say and what you truly mean, do not ignore it. Recognize it as misalignment. Every act of awareness brings you closer to realignment. With time, you begin to notice that the body calms, the mind softens, and the heart feels lighter. Alignment is not a sudden leap, it is a gradual return to center. Energy flows differently when you are aligned. In loneliness, energy leaks. It disperses in worry, in longing, in resentment, in regret. It is as if you are carrying water in a broken vessel. No matter how much you pour in, it keeps running out. But in alignment, the vessel is whole. Energy circulates within, replenishing itself, rising like a flame that feeds on its own light. You no longer feel drained by existence. Instead, you feel supported, as if life itself is breathing with you, carrying you forward without resistance. Loneliness creates walls. It convinces you to shut down, to withdraw, to hide behind masks. But alignment creates openness. You no longer fear being seen because what is seen is real. You no longer resist connection because connection arises naturally when you are whole within. People sense it. They are drawn not to the mask you wear, but to the harmony you embody. Alignment does not only heal loneliness within, it dissolves the illusion of separation between you and the world around you. At the core, loneliness is the call of the self asking to be heard. Alignment is the answer to that call. It is the moment you stop seeking fragments of yourself in other places, in other people, in other distractions, and instead come home to what was always within you. When you walk this path, loneliness transforms. It no longer feels like emptiness, but like space, a sacred space where alignment has room to take root and grow. In the natural world, growth does not begin with brightness, it begins in darkness. A seed does not sprout under the open sky. It does not flourish simply because it is admired. Its journey starts when it disappears into the soil, when it is covered, pressed, and concealed from sight. To the eye of the impatient observer, it looks like the end of the seed's existence. It looks like nothing is happening, like the seed has been lost, forgotten, or suffocated. But this apparent burial is the very act that awakens its hidden potential. There is a profound teaching hidden in this simple observation. Transformation does not begin when everything is visible, celebrated, or recognized. It begins in those moments when one feels buried, unseen, and weighed down by the heaviness of circumstance. Like the seed beneath the earth, a human being also requires the depth of hidden time, the weight of pressure, and the silence of darkness to break open what is concealed within. The soil does not resist the seed, and the seed does not resist the soil. The earth embraces the seed, covering it completely, while the seed surrenders to that covering. In this surrender, a quiet process begins. The outer shell of the seed, once so firm and protective, must crack. It must give way. Without this breaking, there is no possibility for life to emerge. The breaking is not a sign of weakness. It is the very requirement of growth. For something new to arise, the old form must dissolve. So many people resist their moments of darkness. They resist the times when they feel unseen, misunderstood, or pushed down by life. They wish to escape the burial before the work of transformation has even begun. But the wisdom of the seed shows us that this darkness is not punishment. It is preparation. The pressure is not there to destroy. It is there to activate the hidden life force. Without it, the seed remains a seed forever. If you look deeply, you see that the very soil that buries the seed is also the soil that feeds it. What appears as an obstacle is also the nourishment. What seems like a weight is also the source of strength. The darkness of the earth provides moisture, minerals, and protection. In the same way, the difficult circumstances of life carry the nutrients of growth. The experiences that feel heavy and suffocating often carry the exact wisdom and resilience needed for transformation. When the seed accepts its burial, the miracle of germination begins. A tiny root pushes downward into the earth, seeking depth and stability. At the same time, a delicate shoot begins to push upward, reaching for light it cannot yet see. Notice this paradox. For the seed to grow upward, it must first grow downward. For a tree to rise tall into the sky, it must first deepen its roots into the ground. Strength does not come from avoiding the soil, it comes from embracing it. In this way, the process of growth demands both descent and ascent. A human being also requires both. One must go inward, downward, and face the unseen roots of the self before any authentic rising can occur. Without this grounding, any upward movement will be fragile, easily broken by the winds of life. But with deep roots, with inner stability, even the strongest storms cannot uproot what has been cultivated. The burial stage is often the hardest to endure because nothing is visible. On the surface, it seems as if nothing is happening. There is no recognition, no applause, no visible result. This is where patience becomes essential. Just as no one digs up the soil every day to check on the seed, one must learn to trust the unseen process. Growth is taking place even when the eyes cannot see it. Consider how long it takes for certain trees to mature. Some take years before they break through the soil, spending all that time building a strong root system below. In a culture obsessed with speed and results, this can feel unbearable. But the lesson of the seed reminds us that the unseen preparation is not wasted time. It is sacred time. It is the foundation upon which true transformation rests. To be buried does not mean to be ended. It means to be prepared. To be unseen does not mean to be unworthy. It means that the work is happening in silence, far from the gaze of others. The most powerful changes always happen in places where no one is watching. The shell cracks quietly, the root digs silently, the shoot pushes patiently until finally, one day, a small green sprout breaks through the soil. What looked like death was in fact the beginning of life. The seed teaches that growth requires faith. Faith not in an abstract sense, but faith as trust in process. The seed does not know the sky, it has never seen the sun. And yet, something within it reaches upward toward that unseen light. Something inside whispers that the darkness is temporary, that there is more beyond the soil. In the same way, human beings must learn to trust their inner impulse to grow, even when surrounded by difficulty and uncertainty. And so the lesson is simple but never easy. If you wish to grow, you must first accept the burial. You must allow the shell to crack, the old to dissolve, the unseen work to unfold. Only in the stillness of that hidden place can the roots take hold and the new life emerge. The seed must be buried first,